Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast.
As a rule of thumb for a new seller considering going through this process and launching 2 products, including the cost of the first order, as well as the cost of the promotions and advertising that are going to be needed to get the product to get traction, assuming they've made a decent selection, how much money per product do you think that they should budget for?
Well, that's a great question. And I would answer that 2,000 up to 5,000 would be the average budget that we're looking at. We do have, let's say, sellers that had less than 2K, but if we're speaking about private label, unfortunately, that's an average amount that you have to consider. For sure, there are businesses, there are private label sellers that spend more than 10K, but it doesn't.
Label sellers that spend $100,000 launching a product, and those are the guys who are also doing $100 million a year in sales.
For sure. Nevertheless, we understand that it doesn't matter what your budget is. You have to consider all of the things, and let's say the first package that you're to order and your first, let's say, number of samples that you can order and other things. Because if, let's say, the budget is the key differentiator and something makes you make the final decision, for sure, you have to consider cost. If you have more money, cost would probably not be the thing that would make you go after the specific product for sourcing. Nevertheless, it's important for our listeners to consider that there are different things that you can keep in mind. And we suggest not only looking at just 1 or 2 products and only looking at just one product when you're analyzing the products available out there. But it's important also to see what is available and what are, let's say, products that may be alternatives to the product that you're looking to sell. For example, if a lot of consultants and a lot of Amazon teachers speak about garlic press, for example. We have to understand that they come in different sizes and shapes, and all of those sizes and shapes have to be considered in order to understand if you need to go after that product or not.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. In terms of the way product sourcing has changed now versus a year ago or so, do you think there's been any significant changes, or is the process about the same?
To be quite frank with you, we don't see too many changes at this point of time. There were issues at the beginning of the year when there was COVID outbreak in China in terms of the delivery times and the shipping times. But that was probably one of the things that changed compared to 2019, if we are to say about 2020. In other things, no, we haven't we haven't seen any changes, to be quite frank with you.
Okay. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making, especially the new people, when it comes to sourcing products? And I'm sure there's plenty of them.
Going all in, to be quite frank with you, because we already spoke.
Is that what you want to say? Going all in? Okay.
Yes, that's what I said. By that, I mean, we have a seller that has 5K that he spent, let's say, working 9 to 5 as, and then he wants to become an Amazon seller one day. So he quits his job and he just spends $5,000 on all of the inventory. And you can guess where this brings him.
Nowhere.
Well, for sure. And apart from that, this is one of the common mistakes that we see. Another thing that I also mentioned earlier is definitely going after something that is very trendy at this point of time. Face masks is an example, hand sanitizer is another example. And this is also something that let's say, will end up, may end up nowhere, because sometimes the trend may be very, it's not one day trend, but it may last for some time, At the same time, this is something that has been crucial and that has brought a lot of negative experience to the sellers. Another thing that I also paid attention to, and I was in the call with our seller who was using our product, and one of the things that's important to consider is making sure that you're working with good suppliers, because if you're working with not very reliable suppliers, very bad things may happen. And that supplier may just, you don't want to know what's going to happen. And that's the reason why it's very important not just to go with, let's say, just an unreliable supplier, and you haven't seen, let's say, the samples, or you just, or the supplier doesn't have any reviews or something like that, but they have a very good price, for example. So this is something that is very important to consider as well. And it's also important to understand that apart from just, let's say, everything that's associated with the product itself, it's also very important to understand that there are extra money that you are to spend. For example, there is budget for marketing, there is budget for shipping, and if the seller is not, let's say, based out of the US, but he's an FBA seller, it's also very important to consider that. Moreover, it's very important to consider, let's say, if the seller chooses not the FBA model, but the FBM model, it's very important to consider the price of shipping for example, international shipping. So, and this can be not very popular for just an Amazon user to purchase the product, and the cost would be more expensive than the product itself. So it's very important to consider that as well.
Okay. So IO Scout, we'll finish off with this. Who is IO Scout? Like, what does your software do, and who are you most suited for? Who's the ideal customer?
Fantastic. Great question. So we are what we like to call ourselves an all-in-one tool for Amazon sellers. And we have more than 10 tools available in IO Scout. We have the product finder tool, the product tracker tool, the keyword research tool, as well as sales estimator, FBA calculator inbuilt in the product. We offer Google Chrome extension and other things like reverse ASIN, and inventory management, and much more. So we are suited for, I would say, any type of Amazon seller. It may be a newbie or a more experienced seller. Nevertheless, we welcome everyone. And I would say, in terms of, the type of business that we go after, we may be a good fit for wholesale, we may be a good fit for private label, and of course, arbitrage. So I would say we are a one product fit at all. Nevertheless, the best thing is, of course, to try out the product.